Good day everyone, my name is Ho Jun Wen, metric number 263-225 from group Google. Today I'm going to present about some policy approaches on the chapter 6, the population growth and economic development. So at the end of the chapter 6, there is a topic where it gives you some examples on the policy approaches that countries can do. So there are three main aspects here that we have to focus. The first one, which is the general and specific policies that developing country governments can initiate to influence and perhaps even control their population growth and distribution. So first one, which is the developing country governments, what they can do to control the population growth and distribution. Secondly is the developed country governments can initiate in their own countries to lessen their disproportionate consumption of limited world resources and promote a more equitable distribution of the benefits of global economic progress. So here means that the developed country governments, what can they do in their own country to be able to help the developing country in their population growth or distribution. So one of their ways is to lessen their disproportionate consumption, lessen the consumption of the world resources, because world resources are limited, such as the petroleums, oil, one day it will run out. So the third part, which is the developed country governments and the international assistance agencies can initiate to help developing countries achieve their population objectives. So the third part is what these two the developed country and international agencies can do, which directly affects the developing country. So first we look at the developing countries, what they can do. So the first one is to persuade people to have small families through media and educational process, both formal and informal. So by using social media to spread their words around the world, such as using those online platforms like Instagram, Facebook, they can make videos to encourage families, since everyone in the world have access to internet and knows how to use social media and always on their phone. So it's a very effective way to get the message across. So secondly, which is the enhanced family planning programs to provide health and contraceptive services to encourage the desired behavior. Most developing countries have such programs, whereas today only a few countries doesn't. So to enhance family planning programs, so they give out provide those health services, such as testing on giving tests on AIDS, HIV, all that, so that diseases will not pass down to generations or to your friends or to your partner. Make sure that you are healthy, and then you'll be able to build a healthy family. So this is the planning before doing reproductive activities. That's what I understand. So there are many countries already have this program, just that a few countries doesn't. So the third one is the manipulate economic incentives and disincentives for having children by elimination or reduction of maternity leaves and benefits. So Malaysia, we have 60 days maternity leaves and some benefits on uh, maybe financially, for example, from my what I see during my secondary school, my teachers, when they get pregnant, they will be uh, gone for a few months because they're pregnant, and they have to rest and such, and they get paid, like, even though she's not working, she's at home resting, but she still get paid. So this one is to like reduce and or eliminate this uh, benefits, so that maybe women, they will not they would be discouraged to have babies or give birth, because the leaves are less, and so much more burden, it's more tiring, since they don't have these benefits anymore. So the second one is elimination or reduction of financial incentives. So this is also the main idea of this uh, incentives or disincentive is to discourage women to reproduce, to have children. Okay, so the third one is the imposition of financial penalties for having children beyond a certain number. So China has implemented before this, I don't know when, but China has implemented a policy of it's called one child per family. So you only can have like one child. If you have more than one, you will get penalties. So the government will punish you in such manner. So the fourth is the government can attempt to coerce people into having smaller families through power of state legislation and penalties. However, the attempt of such coercion is politically unacceptable. So this is one example that I put here, which is the Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was defeated due to popular resentment of the government's forced sterilization program. So they forced their citizen, the females, the women in India, to sterilize themselves. So sterilization, what it means is after you are sterilized, you are not be able to reproduce, not be able to give birth permanently. So this is a forced program, so it's very disagreed by the people, by the world. Okay, so the last one is raise the social and economic status of women, and hence create conditions favorable to delayed marriage and lower marital fertility. So we are going for the next one. So what the developed countries can do. There are three main issues that are related to each other. So you have to keep in mind the population size, distribution of income, and depletion of non-renewable resources. We go to this. The worldwide program designed to better balance between resources and people. Limiting developing country population growth through social intervention and family planning. Include the responsibility of rich nations to simplify their own consumptions, demands, and lifestyle. So actually Malaysia has sort of implemented something like this, not by the government, by some private organizations like Starbucks. As I can see, they stopped using, actually not just Starbucks, there's like McDonald's too. If you go McDonald's, they give you they don't give you the plastic straws anymore. A lot of places they use paper straws, and also for Starbucks they sell tumblers, which is like water bottles like this. You can bring it there and you get discount. So they're encouraging people to use less resources, such as those plastic cups and etc. So it's also changing, which is means change of lifestyles, to simplify their own lifestyles. Okay, such changes would free resources that could then be used by poor nations to generate the social and economic development essential to slowing population growth. The next one, liberalize the legal conditions for the international immigration of poor and unskilled workers from Africa, Asia, and Latin America to North America, Europe, Japan, and Australia. So by this mean, to immigrate the poor and unskilled workers to a more developed countries to increase their skills, and also to lower the population in the developed countries by by transferring those workers to more developed country. The international migration of peasants from Europe to North America, Australia, and New Zealand in the 19th and earlier 20th centuries was a major factor in moderating the problems of underdeveloped and population pressure in European countries. Okay, next is how developed countries can help developing countries with their population programs. There are many ways which countries can multilateral donor agency can help boost the process of developing countries' population policy objective. The most important of these concerns the willingness of rich countries to be of genuine assistance to poor countries in their development efforts, particularly in sub-Sahara Africa. For instance, the financial assistance, trade relations, and technology transfers. So, what concerns is how willing is the rich countries wanted to assist the poor countries by giving financial assistance, trade relations, which is do tradings internationally from the developing country and the developed country, so that can generate more income or GDP, more export import, and then the technology transfers. Area of research into the technology of fertility control, etc., etc. Example, which is the contraceptive pill, also known as birth control pill, modern intrauterine devices (IUDs), voluntary sterilization procedures. So these are the technologies that be able to control the fertility. Since, like I said, the technology transfers, developing country, they might not have all these technologies to be able to control the fertility in their country. So it's depends on the rich countries whether they wanted to contribute, wanted to help the developing countries in this manner, so they can achieve their objective. Research has been going on for many years in this area. Most all of it financed by international donor organizations, private foundations, and aid agencies of developed countries. So these international donor organizations, private foundations, and agencies. So there's one example, which is the UNFPA, which is the United Nations Population Fund. So that's one example. And improve the effectiveness of this low-cost contraceptive technology while minimizing health risks should be encouraged. Next, financial assistance from developed countries for family planning programs, public education, and national population policy research activities in the developing countries. This area always been assisted. However, such resources might not have been used to achieve fertility goals. Instead, it devoted directly to helping low-income countries in raising their levels of living. As pointed out earlier, it is useless to have a family program if they are not motivated to achieve the goals. So this financial assistance, it depends on how the developing country utilize the fund, how they put into achieving the population growth. If the country are not willing to control the fertility, then all this financial assistance, will be useless, because we can see that it's not effective after all this help from the rich countries. Is because the money all went into raising their levels of living. So that's all from me. I would like to pass it to the next presenter on the new topic on chapter 8. Thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is jingna and my metric number is 261396. Today I would like to share about the central role of education and health. First of all, education and health are basic objectives of development. They are important since the health is central to well-being and the education is essential for satisfying and rewarding life. Therefore, both are fundamental to the broader notion that expanded human capability that lie at the heart of the meaning of development in Chapter 1. Also, health and education are vital components of growth and development as input to the aggregate production functions. This because education plays a key role in the ability of a developing country to absorb modern technology and to develop the capacity for a self-sustaining growth and development. Moreover, health is a prerequisite for increase in productivity, and successful education relies on adequate health as well. Furthermore, health and education are closely related in economic development. For your information, health and education are investments made in the same individual. Therefore, greater health capitals may improve the return to investment in education. This because the health is an important factor in school attendance and the formal learning process of a child. So, a longer life raises the returns to investments in education, and better health at any point during working life may in effect lower the rate of depreciation of education capital. On the other hand, greater education capitals may improve the returns to investment in health, because many health programs rely on basic skills often learned at school, including personal hygiene and sanitation. Also, education is needed for formations and training of health personnel. Lastly, the development policy needs to focus on income, education, and health simultaneously. This because the increase in income often do not lead to substantial increase in investment in children education and health. But better educated mothers tend to have healthier children at any income level. There is considerable evidence that The better the education of the mothers, the better the health of her children. Therefore, the significant market failures in education and health require policy actions. That's all from me. Thank you.
So I will continue with investing in education and health in human capital approach. So human capital is a term economists often use for education, health, and other human capacity that can affect productivity. When health, education, and other human capacity increase, the productivity will increase as well. A stream of higher future value can be generated from both expansion of education and improvement in health after an initial investment is made. The rate of return can be deduced and compared with return to other investment. This is done by estimating the present discounted value of the increased income stream made possible by this investment and then comparing it with their direct and indirect costs. Education increases empowerment and autonomy in major matters in life, such as capacity for civic engagement, making decisions concerning own health care, and freedom to choose own spouse over an arranged marriage. Income gain can be written as follows. E is the income with extra education, N is income without extra education, T is the year, I is the discount rate. The summation is over expected year of working life. So this figure is age earning profile by level of education in Venezuela. This chart shows how income varies over the life cycle for people with various levels of education, which is university, secondary, primary, and no education. As we can see, those with higher level of education, such as university, start full-time work at a later age, which is around 25, but as it shows, their income quickly exceeds those who started working earlier, such as secondary, primary, and no education. But such future income gains from education must be compared with the total cost to understand the value of human capital as an investment. The total cost are divided into two types, which is direct cost and indirect cost. The direct cost is books, school uniform, and tuition fee. The indirect cost is primarily income foregone because students could not work when they are in school. So this figure shows the financial trade-off in the decision to continue in school. There are two earning profiles presented, which is primary graduate and secondary graduate. For the primary graduate, they are assumed to begin their work at 13 years old, while for the secondary graduate, they are begin work at 17 years old. There are 4 years income are foregone for secondary graduates, which is considered as the indirect cost as labeled in the diagram. And there are also have the direct costs which as mentioned before, such as book, school uniform, and tuition fee. This total cost will not experienced by the primary graduates because they are leave school at the end of the primary grades. Over the rest of the secondary graduate life, they are able to make more money each year than the primary graduates, and it is called benefit as labeled in the diagram as well. So before comparing cost with benefits, we have to know that $1 today is worth more to an individual than $1 in the future. So those future income gains must be discounted accordingly. So there is the relationship. Discount rate lower, then the rate of return is higher, which means the direct costs and indirect costs are lower, and it's the same meaning, which is benefits are higher. So this table is return to investment in education by level, regional, average. We can see the sub-Saharan Africa private rate of return to primary education is over 37%, but many families do not make this investment because they have no ability to borrow, and a working child can bring major amount of money into the family. The higher rate of return for developing countries reflect that the income differential between those more and less schooling is greater on average than for the developed country. The first three columns indicate the social rate of return, including amount of public subsidy for individuals' education as a part of the direct cost, because this is the part of the investment. That's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Hananie and I will be explaining about child labor. Child labor is a widespread problem in developing countries. When children under age 15 work, their labor time disrupts their schooling and in a major city cases, prevent them from attending schools altogether. Many laboring children are subject to especially cruel and exploitative working conditions. According to International Labour Organizations (ILO), a UN body reported in its 2010 quadrennial report on child labour that as of 2008, total of 306 million children between ages 5 and 17 doing some kind of work, but 1/3 of these permissible work based on national laws and existing ILO conventions. But 250 million are classified as child laborers because they are either under minimum age for work until 17 and engage in work that poses a threat to their health, safety, or morals or subject to condition of forced labor. This number is down about 3% from 2 to 2 million in 2004, and there are over 9 million child laborers between the ages of 5 and 11, nearly a third of them doing hazardous work. More than half of child laborers, some 115 million children, are still exposed to hazardous work. Sub-Saharan Africa state the highest rate of child labor. As we can see the table here, Asia and Pacific have more than 48 million children doing hazardous work, while Sub-Saharan Africa over 39 million and Latin America 9 million. Child labor remains a problem in the Arab states, where the issue have been largely ignored until very recently. ILO reports that some of its surveys show that more than half of child laborers toil for 9 or more hours per day. The worst form of child labor endangered health or well-being, involving hazard, sexual exploitation, trafficking, and debt bondage. In 2011 publication, ILO reported that every year about 22,000 children die as a result of work-related accidents. According to Kaushik model, to model child labor, we make two assumptions. First one is a household with sufficiently high income will not send its children to work. There is strong evidence with this statement that it is true, at least most of the time. Second, child and labor are substitutes. In fact, children are not as productive as adults, and adults can do any work than children can do. This assertion is not an assumption, but it is finding of many studies of the productivity of child laborers in many countries. It is important to emphasize this because one rationalization for child labor often heard that the children have special productive abilities, such as small fingers that make them important for the production of rugs or other products. However, there is no support in this view because essentially adult laborers are significantly more productive. So, the next slide I will be explaining about the child labor model and analysis. As we can see here is the child labor model. It's graphed in figure 8.3. On the x-axis, we have supply of labor in adult equivalent. So if a child labor is y times as productive as an adult worker, we consider one child the productive equivalent of white adult worker. According to our assumption, Y is less than 1. For example, if a child labor is half as reproductive as an adult worker, then Y is equal to 0.5. Then we will start our assumption by looking at A prime vertical line is represent the perfectly elastic vertical supply adult, and it also represent the number of unskilled adults. This assumption is highly reasonable for the families that they are poor enough to send their children to work to survive. So what happens if wages fall? If wages fall, some families find they are poor enough to send their children to work. At first, wages are still high enough so that this affects only few families and children. It is reflected in the S-shaped curve. Below WH is still quite steep. But as the wage continue to fall, more families will do the same, and the labor supply expands along the S-shaped curve, and it becomes flatter, and smaller drops in the wage lead many more families to send their children to work. And if it is and it reach WL, and if the wage reach WL, then all families will send their children to work. When the WL reach, it will touch the TT prime vertical line. Here we can see it is represent the aggregate labor supply children and adults. This is sum of number of adults plus number of children multiplied by lower productivity, which is less than 1. Resulting the supply curve here, we can see that it is very different from what we learned in basic econometrics, where the supply curve is upward sloping, but here it is vertical line. But it is relevant since this graph for developing countries. So to summarize, if the wage above WH, then the supply curve is along AA prime. But if the wage below WL, then the supply curve is the TT prime, is along the TT prime. Now we consider that the labor demand curve DL here, the straight line, is cut through the AA prime vertical line and TT prime vertical line, resulting that we have two equilibrium here, which is E1 and E2. E2 is the bad equilibrium, where is effective ban on child labor. But if we move to E1 here, is the good equilibrium, the new equilibrium. The child labor ban will be self-enforcing, because by the assumption the new wage is high enough for no family to have to send their children to work. If poor family coordinate with this, then it will be better. But in general, in reality, with a large number of family, they will be unable to achieve this.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Azimah binti Azizan. My metric number 262351. Today, I will present about 4 main approaches to child labor policy current in development policy. Firstly, recognize child labor as an expression of poverty. Recommends and emphasizes on eliminating poverty rather than directly addressing child labor. Due to poverty, the child forced to work to get more money for life, so the approaches is needed to give pressure to eliminate poverty. Next is emphasizes strategies to get more children into school and conditional cash transfer CCT incentive. Emphasizes strategies to get more children into school, including expanded school places such as new village school and conditional cash transfer CCT incentive, which is welfare benefit provided conditionally based on family behavior, such as children's regular school attendance and health clinic visitation, to induce parents to send their children to school, such as a Progresa Oportunidades program in Mexico or Experimental Malawi program. From Experimental Malawi program, findings from a randomized controlled trial study of cash transfer program targeted to adults and girls in Malawi offer important insights. There are three researchers that compared families who were randomly assigned to one of three groups: no cash transfer, unconditional cash transfer UCT, and cash transfer that were made conditional on the girls' continued school attendance CCT. Given this structure, the researchers examined education achievement and marriage and high-bearing outcomes. They found both transfer programs lead to higher rates of continued enrollment, avoiding dropout, but CCT had been well over double, about 2.3 times the impact as UCT. The research found that the girls in the CCT program outperformed those in the UCT program on English reading comprehension, a modest but significant difference. At the same time, the authors found that the CCT were far more cost-effective in raising enrollment and attendance than UCT, even taking into account that extra expenses of running the more administratively complex CCT program. On the other hand, the UCT program was found to have strong impact on delaying marriage and childbearing by 44% and 27% respectively after 2 years. And why CCT work better at keeping girls in school and learning effectively? They have no effect on reducing likelihood of teenager pregnancy or marriage. The author found this entirely due to impact of UCT on this outcome among the girls who dropped out of school but whose family continued to receive the transfer benefits because, after all, the transfer is unconditional. The authors conclude that the offer of CCT appears to have been ineffective in dissuading those with high propensity to drop out school from getting married and starting childbearing, especially among girls 16 or older. Meanwhile, families living in poverty whose daughter did drop out from school end up receiving nothing, precluding other poverty reducing benefits. As the author concludes, this study takes clear that while CCT program may be more effective than UCT in obtaining the desired behavior change, they also undermine the social protection dimension of cash transfer program. This strategy has widespread support from many international agencies and development bodies. It's probably a more effective approach than making basic education compulsory because without complement policy, the incentive to send children to work will still remain strong and enforcement is likely to be weak. For the same reason that regulations of informal sector have proved almost impossible in many other cases. Compulsory schooling is a good idea, but it is not by itself a sufficient solution to the problem of child labor. Improving the quality of basic schooling and increasing accessibility are also important. The fraction of national income spent on basic education in a majority low-income countries remain problematic. As International Labour Organization (ILO) pointed out, in the sub-Saharan also half all low-income countries spend less than 4% of their national income on education. In South Asia, Bangladesh devotes only 2.6% of its national income to education, and Pakistan 2.7%, and about India invests is a smaller proportion of GNP, around 3.3%, than the median for sub-Saharan Africa, even though average income around one-third higher. Even more worrying is the share of national income devoted to education is stagnating or decreasing in key countries, including Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, which is account for 15 million out-of-school children. Next is considers child labor and inevitable. At least in the short run, and stresses palliative measures such as regulating it to prevent abuse and to provide support service for working children. This approach is most commonly associated with UNICEF, which has prepared a checklist of regulatory and social approaches that could meet the best interests of the child. The regulations included on UNICEF checklist included expanding education opportunity through time off for standard or workplace schooling, which is encourage strict law enforcement against illegal child labor trafficking, providing support service for parents and for children working on the street, and working to develop social norms against the economic exploitation of children. The fourth approach is favors banning child labor. Favors banning child labor most often associated with the ILO. If this is not possible, however, and recognize that child labor may not always result from multiple equilibrium problems, this approach favors banning child labor in its most abusive form. The latter approach has received much attention in recent years. The ILO worst form of child labor convention was adopted in 1999. The worst form covered under the convention included all forms of slavery or practice similar to slavery, such as the sale and trafficking of children, debt bondage, or serfdom or forced or compulsory labor, child prostitution and pornography, other illicit activities such as drug trafficking, and work that, by its nature or the circumstance, is likely to harm the health, safety, or moral of children. The ILO set a working target to completely eliminate the worst form of the child by 2016. Significant progress has been made, but also of 2011, the ILO reported that progress was not fast enough to meet this goal. Okay, for study in 2003 by ILO estimate that eliminating child labor and extending quality schooling for all children up to age 14 over 20 years period will result in the baseline cases of 5 trillion of economic gains in present discount value after accounting for opportunity costs. Even when changing the assumption of the study to be very conservative about the likely income gains, the result is an enormously productive economic investment with a 44% internal rate of return in the baseline and 23% in the conservative case. Finally, Many activities in developed countries have proposed imposition of trade sanctions against countries that permit child labor of at least banning the goods under which child work. This approach is well-intentioned, but if the objective is the welfare of children, it needs to be considered carefully because if children cannot work in the export sector, they will almost certainly to be forced to work in the informal sector, where wages and other working conditions are generally worse. Export restrictions may also make it more difficult for poor countries to grow their way out of poverty. Of course, the worst form of child labor can never be tolerated. It seems clear too that efforts at banning imports from developing countries were channeled instead into working to secure more public and private development assistance for non-government organizations that work with child laborers. Much more will be accomplished to help these children. That's all for me. Thank you.